Today we're going to talk about the unintended consequences of Trump being on trial, and I interviewed the nation's premier voting rights attorney and my co-host from my series Democracy, Watch, Mark Elias, about Donald Trump and his mouthpieces engaging in jury tampering. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So I think we're finally starting to see why Donald Trump so desperately wanted to avoid trial. First of all, there's the obvious one. He doesn't want to be a convicted felon. And according to the latest Reuters Ipsos poll, from just a couple of weeks ago, when registered voters were asked if they would vote for Trump if he was convicted of a felony, only 24% said yes, while 60% said no. Even among Republicans, 24% said they wouldn't, which is a huge number of voters in a party whose identity is solely predicated on allegiance to the God King. And now that the process has started, and is actually moving quite quickly, this train isn't stopping till it reaches the station. So we may see Trump become a convicted felon in the coming weeks. Not exactly the resume builder you want ahead of an imminent election. And granted, Trump will claim that it doesn't matter, that his voters won't care. That's bullshit. Look, most people aren't totally tuned into politics right now. I wish more people were, but they aren't. But they will be more and more come November. And when those independents or soft Republicans or suburban moms do finally tuned in, only to find that their guys are convicted felon, you are kidding yourself if you think that's gonna do anything but hurt him. Don't want to overgeneralize here, but people aren't really looking for felons to lead the US military. But aside from that one, there's also the day-to-day optics of Donald Trump just being in the courtroom. He's fallen asleep 4 out of 5 days, including today, which, look, I'm sure it's boring in there, but if your principal attack against your political opponent is that he is literally sleepy, then your only job is to stay awake. If you have to fill your pockets with caffeine pills, if you have to wear a shock collar, you have to stay awake. But Trump, the leader of the Sleepy Joe movement, can't manage to do that, which objectively severely limits his ability to then go out on on the campaign trail in these last few months and claim that Biden is tired. Biden is all over the country. Just this week, Biden was in Philly, Scranton, Pittsburgh, Delaware, the week before he went to Baltimore, and Madison, Wisconsin. So doesn't exactly square with the talking point that Biden's locked away in the basement, while Trump is filled with youthful vigor. And when he does manage to stay awake, frankly, the guy looks weak. He's reduced to these sad little courtroom, hallway, press conferences, printed out a bunch of articles from Fox host, who he calls legal scholars, saying that his prosecution is wrong. He's whining every day about election interference, and that he's gonna miss Barron's graduation, which I'm sure was very much on his radar before he realized they could be the focus of a nice little pity party. He just looks weak. He looks pathetic. He's supposed to be strong, but he's just kind of this tired old man who bitches and moans a lot, and it's embarrassing. It's not strong. And look, I think Trump's whole idea of a strong man has always been backwards, but I could at least see it from Republican voters' perspectives. I could see how they would think that he looks strong and tough, but the guy we're seeing now is just the polar opposite. And so without that, as far as Trump is concerned, what do you have left? Granted, Trump's campaign is trying their best to spin something good out of this. He did some campaign stop at Chick-fil-A and bought milkshakes, and writing media is pretending that they found their messiah. It was the most brilliant campaign move in modern American history, that after Trump was finished being on trial for 34 felony accounts, he went to a fast food place. Really compelling stuff like somebody get this guy the nuclear football. So yeah, it's all just very pathetic, and it's happening at the exact moment that election season is ramping up, and November is approaching, and people are starting to pay attention, and this is the Donald Trump that they're seeing. Not great. And then, of course, there's some positive stuff happening from Biden's perspective. We've got a strong economy. We've got job growth that's still defying the odds, and surging unemployment is below 4% for 26 straight months. The stock market is strong. Ukraine is going to be getting their aid, which is some great news. And finally, organizers have managed to get abortion on the ballot all over this country. Florida, Montana, New York, Arizona, and now even Nevada, another major swing state. Republicans have found every rake they could possibly step on, and they've stepped on them over and over and over again, and it's all coming together at the worst time. And look, I don't say any of this so that you'll feel like this is in the bag. The point here isn't to feel complacent. The point is to know that there is some hope that, if we continue to organize and donate, and to stay involved and stay informed, that we've got the tools to win that, in a sea of what feels like constant bad news, that there is some stuff to be hopeful about. Next up is my conversation with Mark Elias. So Mark Trump's first criminal trial is underway, right now in New York. I want to point your attention to a tweet that's gained some attention on the right, and throughout the rest of the ecosystem as well. A conservative internet provocateur. His name is Clay Travis. He wrote, "If you're a Trump supporter in New York City, who is part of the jury, pool to everything you can to get seated on the jury, and then refuse to convict as a matter of principle, dooming the case via hung jury. It's the most patriotic thing you could possibly do." Mark, is this instruction legal? Because it sounds like jury tampering. Okay, so it's not the most patriotic thing you could do, it's the most illegal thing you could do. So, I strongly recommend, if you are listening to someone named Clay Travis, you probably need, because you are not allowed to lie to the judge during jury selection, and the judge during jury selection will ask every prospective juror a series of questions. Some of the questions, the court has come up with some of the questions that you parties have come up with. Other questions will come up along the way, but fundamental to all of the questions are: can you be fair? Do you have an open mind? Will you follow the evidence? And are you able to render a verdict based on that? So to the extent, whoever Mr. Travis is suggesting to you that you do something other than that, don't do it. Don't lie. Get off the jury. If you are unable to be open-minded, if you purposely get on a jury and have a closed mind, it sometimes comes up. The other jurors will actually rat you out during deliberations. They'll be like this: one juror wouldn't deliver anything so bad. Note with this guy, Clay Travis himself, had any legal exposure for suggesting as much. Now, do we know if Clay Travis is actually a real person? Or is he just like an internet account? Right? But just like one of Elon's manifestations. I mean, I've been dealing with this over the last few days. There's one guy who's like, Mark, how does it feel to have lost that big case when you worked in the White House? And I'm like, I never worked in the White House. Now, he's fighting on the internet with other people that he thinks I did work in the White House. But in any event, look, I don't think a judge is going to track down Clay Travis. With all due respect to Mr. Travis's profile, he's just not going to be worth it. I mean, theoretically, he would have legal exposure for this, but he would say it's just First Amendment speech. But look, I think that really, the liability here would be on anyone dumb enough to follow Travis. How confident are you that the prosecutors would be able to weed out any moles that did make their way onto a jury? Yeah, so it's not just the process, judge. So don't overestimate the role of the parties in jury selection versus the judge, right? They all play a role here. But judges have this judge in particular, is very experienced, has overseen the choosing of a lot of juries, and a lot of profile cases, and they have ways of asking and re-ask questions that are intended to ferret out these kinds of moles, as you put it. They gather a lot of information. They ask them a lot of questions. It doesn't mean that once in a blue moon, they don't get through. But between the judges' questions and the ability of the prosecutors to strike jurors who just give them a gut sense, each side gets a certain number of what are called preempt reaches, which is basically you get to challenge them for no reason, as long as it's not a legal reason, just based on a gut sense. The prosecutors, who also have done a lot of jury selection in Manhattan, in New York City, will have the ability to strike those people as well. Okay, now moving on to day one of the trial itself. Trump was complaining that the judge wasn't allowing him to attend his son's high school graduation. First of all, that's not true. The judge didn't even rule on that question yet. But more broadly, what's your reaction to this sense of victimhood from the guy who's charged with committing 34 felonies? I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Look, this guy is sleeping through his own trial. Donald Trump, he's not an awful and sleeping there. His own trial. Could you imagine if he actually Barron's high school graduation, how much sleeping he would do? He'd catch up on he'd get an entire mid-afternoon nap. I doubt that Donald Trump actually intended or intends to go to Barron's high school graduation. He doesn't seem to be an overly involved Father, like, I mean like school. Auditoriums doesn't seem like his vibe. Yeah, but look, as you point out, like he is already complaining about having to miss his son's graduation. He's also complaining about missing the Supreme Court argument. He's complaining about not being able to campaign. He's complaining. He just wants to complain. The fact is that the criminal defendant is out on bail as a privilege. Okay, like he's not in custody right now, because he is. He has met the requirements to not be in custody. But as a criminal defendant, there are certain obligations you have, and the minimum one, what the absolute minimum one, is to show up to your own trial every day. Yeah, right, like you cannot it is not an optional event. It's not like, oh, yeah, this day seems really boring, and I'll skip it. He has to show up the trial every day. That is actually a requirement. The judge actually had to read him. Here's a warning, that's it. If you don't show up to trial, we will issue an arrest warrant, and you will be, you'll be arrested. So look, the judge has not yet actually denied the request to go to his graduation. But I think the judge will deny it because, as you know, he can't miss the trial, and it would meaning that the jury is inconvenienced, because the jury would then have to take that day off. So I think Barron will have to live with the indignity. Donald Trump not sleeping in the audience during his trip. There is also some irony in the fact that all of this is happening. This trial right now is happening because just weeks or months after Barron himself was born, Donald Trump decided to have an affair with a woman named Stormy Daniels, who he then would pay hush money to in an illegal campaign finance scheme. And that is the very issue that he's on trial for right now. So I mean, like, spare us the Father of the Year routine. Yeah, it's also, by the way, really interesting, and I don't know if you've noticed this. It hasn't been widely reported, but I think it's really important for people out there who are watching the trial to note is, as far as I can tell, neither Melania nor Barron nor any of the other Trump kids have actually shown up to stand by their father at the trial, which is like the bare minimum of criminal defendant sort of posturing, right? Which is that when you are on trial, the least you want is your family sitting behind you, so that the jury and the judge and everyone sees that there is someone in the world who cares about you, like your wife, your children. He apparently can't even muster that, so I don't think that, as you say, he's gonna win Father of the Year award. And I think its family seems to be voting with its feet. And of course, to see the full episode with Mark Elias, click the thumbnail right here on the screen, or check out the Democracy Watch playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version, and of course, to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.